The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
And I've never seen the European Union more united. Actually, for the past 10 years, it started with Brexit, went on with Trump's first term, then COVID, war in Ukraine, energy, and now finding a peace solution.
We're living in the most momentous and dangerous of times. In the various meetings in the last few weeks, most recently 2 days ago in London, the answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament. And Europe is ready to massively boost its defense spending, both to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
There are reports that Merz wants the outgoing parliament to agree to boost spending on infrastructure and defense.
Well, from recent events, especially what we have seen from Washington in the last few days, particularly Friday evening our time, including the announcement today, there is tremendous pressure to act on the European side. And from my point of view, this also creates a certain time pressure. We now have to show that we are capable of acting independently in Europe.
Look, it should be crystal clear to European leaders now that NATO is dead. We can't rely on the US security guarantee. They've kind of spelt it out to us. I mean, J.D. Vance talking about interests and values not being aligned. We just have to get on with our defence. And Russia is an existential threat. It's absolutely crystal clear.
We're certainly living in a very different world than we were even 2 or 3 months ago. It's just incredible to watch. You're listening to Stephen Fleury, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us on today's show. You can get to the live video stream of this program at trumpetdaily.com or at the Rumble channel, rumble.com/Trumpet Daily. So what a time to be alive, to witness all of these prophecies being fulfilled. One of our news gatherers yesterday, this is the show to start the week. He wondered how this Zelenskyy-Trump fight in the Oval Office, how much of a distraction that might be to the real important stories. Well, you see there in the cold open, you see what's the most significant development flowing out from a 10-minute fight, a 10-minute verbal fight in the Oval Office. Yeah, I mean, you look at what they did to Zelenskyy. This is our call to arm. You've got the Vandalian woman there saying that we're living in an era of rearmament. Just let that sink in for a moment. Here, the Trump administration, Donald Trump, I mean, he sees himself as a peacemaker. And I think he sincerely believes that he's going to help make peace. But as I read to you yesterday, Isaiah 59 and verse 8, we don't know the way to peace. No one's looking to God. Everyone's looking to man-made solutions. And they don't solve anything. They just cause more problems. Here we're trying to make peace in Ukraine. And Europe, led by Germany, is talking about a massive rearmament. Again, let it sink in. What do you suppose Herbert Armstrong would be saying about these headlines? These are all from today. CNN, EU chief, we urgently have to rearm Europe. Rearm Europe? And it's got to happen urgently. Investors Business Daily, defense stocks rise as Europe rearms urgently after Trump-Zelenskyy clash. Who put Zelenskyy up to this? Now, inquiring minds want to know. We know about the radical left. We know about the Obama people that were counseling him before he went into the Oval Office. But I'd like to know which European elites were counseling him as well. It all blew up. And now there's talk of Europe leading a ceasefire deal. So Zelenskyy, he can't work with Donald Trump. He can't be expected to work with Trump, who's given him, or America, I should say, hundreds of billions of dollars. But now, suddenly, Europe can fly into the rescue? I mean, this is unbelievable what we're seeing. Reuters, European stocks close at record high, led by defense share. Now it's helping Europe's economy. War is big business. That's right. Whether you're funneling money into Ukraine or whether you're rearming the continent. What a boom for German industry. They're ready. They're ready to change those factories, or at least the focus of those factories, to armaments. We're living in an era of rearmament, after all. We're not talking about supplying ammunition to Ukraine fighters, rounds of ammunition for their machine guns. This is Germany leading Europe to rearm. And you've got member states, 2 of them, that have their own nuclear weapons already. And then several other nations that have U.S. nuclear weapons on their soil. And now we're talking about a massive rearmament? Yeah, that's right. And moving on to the next story. What stories are being overlooked because of this dust-up in the Oval Office? I mean, it was significant, not so much in what happened during that 10-minute period, but look at what it triggered. Look at what's accelerating. This is the way events are moving. As I say, we're living in a completely different world than we were just 2 months ago. Who could have thought that Donald Trump, who is prophesied to save America, would also serve as a catalyst for so many of these prophecies abroad to be fulfilled as well? How do you explain the dichotomy where at home there's so much strength, there's wise decision making, but then abroad there's so many miscalculations? The way you explain it is through Bible prophecy. Donald Trump is not going to suppress the formation of the Holy Roman Empire, the 7th and final formation. He's going to help it. And a lot of other people will help it too. And you heard it in the cold open. Just think of it. In the first term of Donald Trump, he was going to Europe saying, hey, I love NATO. I want it to stay together, but you've got to pay your fair share. And they were kicking and screaming. And now you've got European leaders saying, hey, we need to pay more. And everyone's saying, you're right, let's pay more. What a change. What a dramatic change. We're seeing prophecy being fulfilled. It's electrifying. Reuters, EU proposes borrowing 150 billion euros in big rearmament push. There's a big push to rearm in Europe. As I say, what do you suppose Herbert Armstrong would be saying right now if he were still alive? This was his signature prophecy. I mean, he was proclaiming this for 50 plus years. Fox News, EU weighs $840 billion plan to rearm Europe after U.S. pauses Ukraine aid. Well, we've got to do it. We've got to help Ukraine, say the nations that have been sending billions and billions of dollars to Vladimir Putin. That's right, paying for Russian energy. Donald Trump called them out for that today on Truth Social. You see why they hate Orange Hitler so much. He's public enemy number one. They see him as the big... What we're seeing is the world realigning in opposition to Donald Trump. There you go. That's big picture. And I mean, even here on this continent, you've got the tariffs, Canada, 25% on Canada, 25% on Mexico, 20% to China. And then, of course, those nations, they respond in kind. We know about the trade war. The trade war has started. The mart of nations hasn't quite developed yet. Isaiah 23, but that's coming. I mean, you can see the hand is writing on the wall. You can see we're in the early stages. Trade war leads to hot wars. And you've got these very prosperous nations. These are not third world countries in Europe that are saying, yeah, let's put $800 billion. I think the U.S. spends about $700-800 billion on defense each year. And who knows how much of that is just wasted away. Doge will figure that out, hopefully. But when Europe gets down to business, when the German industrialists get down to business and they've got $1 trillion to work with to build up their defenses, you think they're going to waste away half of it to all these DEI programs? I mean, this, as I say, is electrifying. What we're witnessing. It is if you're a student of Bible prophecy. Listen to Bloomberg Radio from yesterday, clip 2.
Our reliance now on the US is a vulnerability, clearly.
I think, which in and of itself is a kind of 1 week realization in Europe, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, there was always going to be an election in the US. It was a tight contest. It was a 50-50 call. It was possible that Trump was going to win. We knew all about Trump in the first term, and they'd been messaging around this. Unfortunately, I think we had our heads in the sand, and we didn't realize the world was changing. The world has now changed. Post Friday's showdown in the White House, it should be crystal clear, I think, to everyone where Trump's sympathies lay, and they're not with Europe.
The world has now changed, and it's happened overnight, in large part in response to the showdown on Friday. On Friday, you have a 10-minute showdown between Zelenskyy and President Trump. And on Monday, Europe announces that we're going to put 800 billion euro toward rearming. There's a European rearmament in the works. Listen to DW News from yesterday as well, clip 3.
I think everybody understands here in Germany that in this very situation Europe is in, we cannot risk a situation of uncertainty, of political uncertainty, especially for our security, and that means for the security not only of NATO, but especially also of Ukraine.
These are all the top stories. They're probably not getting much attention on MSNBC. But you heard in the clip before, the guy said our reliance on the U.S. is a vulnerability. Now you see, you can't rely on America. America can't be trusted. And then here in America, you've got plenty of people, as I've said, that are totally fine with an isolationist approach. Look, let Europe fend for itself. We're sick of it. We're sick of the disrespect. I played those clips from Schellenberger yesterday. It's a dysfunctional relationship, and there needs to be a divorce. Well, as I said at the end of yesterday's show, there's plenty of European elites that think the same way. We just saw the divorce between America and Ukraine. All of that work. And Zelenskyy agreeing 3 times to the mineral deal. 3 times to get America invested in Ukraine's future. If I have time, I'll play some clips from J.D. Vance. He was on with Hannity last night, and here again, man doesn't know the way to peace, and I'm not saying the Trump administration is doing everything perfectly with respect to Ukraine, but there is a sincerity there to stop the firing. It's been going on for 3 years. And, if America was leading the way as the peacemaker, I'd be curious to see how much leverage Trump would have with Putin to get him out of eastern Ukraine. This is where the negotiations are going to be the stickiest. How much of that territory does Russia get to keep? if the guns stop shooting at each other, if the armies stop shooting. Well, we'll see. We'll see what Europe accomplishes. But the big story here, and we've written about this, these secret deals between Russia and Germany, and you see the fruits of it. How does Europe send billions and billions and billions of dollars to Putin, and then in the same breath say, America, you need to keep sending billions and billions and billions of dollars to Zelenskyy because democracy. There you go. They're aligning against America. The whole point is to weaken the United States of America. This is public enemy number one, particularly with Orange Hitler at the helm. He's a catalyst for just about everything. You know, you listen to J.D. Vance, and a lot of what he said, it just seemed reasonable. How they negotiated with Zelenskyy, what led up to the Oval Office meeting, what they were hoping for, the reality of the past 3 years. He just sounded like a reasonable negotiator. And of course, that's Trump's objective. He wants to make a deal. Everybody knows this. He wants to make a deal. But then in a 10-minute period, the deal, it just blew up. And already there are reports coming out of Europe saying that, well, I think France can lead the way to make peace. And by that, you put Germany in parentheses, because Germany is the powerhouse. France is like a spokesperson for Germany. That's the reality of it. This is just today, these headlines I just gave to you. Look at what has happened overnight. I said that the world's different than it was 2 months ago. The world's different than it was last Thursday. Here we are. It's amazing to watch. And as I say, this sets apart this work, the Trumpet magazine, the Trumpet website. You can go to thetrumpet.com. You can look through our archives. You can read Germany's conquest of the Balkans. You can read the Holy Roman Empire in prophecy. As I say, you have to view all of these developments through the lens of Bible prophecy. That's what makes it understandable. The 800 number, 1-866-930-3024. Make sure you subscribe to our Trumpet magazine or request those free booklets. And don't forget about this one, the United States and Britain in prophecy. Listen, God prophesied that he said that the affliction would be so bitter, this communist infiltration, this communist takeover of America, that he would intervene through a Jeroboam figure to save America temporarily. But what about the long-term prophetic view? That's in here. That's in here. And that's why you need this book, as well as some of the others we've written, America Under Attack and so on. Listen to my father. This goes back 11 years ago, so I think it's from 2014. This was a Key of David episode titled Europe's Dirty Secret, 11 years ago, clip 8.
Now, the U.S. ambassador recently called Germany our most important ally. And yet God talks about your lovers. And I tell you, if you think about that, it is just horrors upon top of horrors, if you really, really do think about it. Now, does the U.S. ambassador recently calling Germany our most important ally, does that make it so? No, it doesn't. Not according to Bible prophecy, not at all. Now, here we've had alliances with Britain in World War I and World War II, and they've always been our most important ally. But now this U.S. ambassador said, why, Germany is our most important ally. Our enemy in World War I and World War II, and they tried very hard to destroy America and what it stood for, and Britain. And now they have nuclear bombs that belong to the United States of America. Now, what is going to prevent them from using them against us, let's say, if they wanted to? This is a dangerous game, well, it's not a game. It's a dangerous decision in foreign policy to do such a thing. Very dangerous indeed. And I'll tell you, God has a strong view about that when you start cozying up to people whom God calls your lovers.
Cozying up to the lovers. Yeah, they're an ally. They tried to destroy America and everything that it stands for. And okay, welcome them back into the community of nations when they repent. Has there been repentance? Is there a national repentance on display? You listen to them today, so many of their diplomats, so many of their spokespeople, as I say, they're not even concealing their hostility, their contempt for America. America's now a vulnerability. America's the problem. Donald Trump was the problem. You know what's interesting? On Friday, he made a statement there. J.D. Vance was trying to downplay it and say, look, these discussions should be reserved for a private conversation, not right out here in front of all the cameras. And at one point, Trump said, no, I think this is good. I think Americans need to see what we're dealing with. And Americans saw it. And Americans were outraged. And so were Europeans. But for a very different reason. How could Trump and Vance ambush the modern equivalent of Winston Churchill? How could they be so cruel? How could they abandon him? People who support MAGA, of course, saw it very differently. This is from LBC. It says, speaking on Tuesday, Ursula von der Leyen highlighted that the EU defense plans set out could mobilize around 8 billion euros for defense. We are in an era of rearmament. You heard it in the cold open. Everybody heard it. It was in English. European leaders talking about an era of rearmament. Forget about sending supplies and equipment and military hardware to Ukraine. I mean, now we need them all over Europe. Is this going to bring peace? An era of rearmament? Wow. These are some electrifying headlines. It says the plan, when enacted, will see Europe activate the National Escape Clause of the Stability and Growth Pact. She explained, listen to this, because just think about what they did in 2018, 2019, when Trump went over there and said, look, could you just pay more dues into NATO? How dare you make us pay money? We've got pensions to cover. We've got retirement packages to give out to our people. She explained that if member states increase spending by 1.5% on average, the additional measures could create around 650 billion euros in funding. So now we've gone, in just 6-7 years, we've gone from Trump saying you should pay more to NATO for your defense, to European leaders saying we need to pay more for our own defense. Forget about NATO. NATO's as good as dead. We need to pay more for our European defense. Because why? Well, the showdown with Zelenskyy. You saw what happened. They ganged up on Churchill. Now, Orange Hitler is our vulnerability. We cannot rely on America. America cannot be trusted. You see where this is headed. It's headed exactly where God said that it would. As I say, read the United States and Britain in prophecy. Here's more from the European Commission president, clip 6.
I have outlined in this letter to the leaders the Rearm Europe plan. This set of proposals focuses on how to use all the financial levers at our disposal in order to help member states to quickly and significantly increase expenditures in defense capabilities.
all financial levers at our disposal in order for member states to build up their defense, to rearm quickly, significantly. This article says, the move is set against an increasingly uncertain backdrop where global affairs are concerned, with many insisting the world is seeing a new world order emerge. You read between the lines, and of course, it means Trump. There's a new world order, and we've got to be prepared for it. Look how quickly we forget even recent history, even history from the last 80 or 90 years. This is my father again from that Key of David 11 years ago, clip 7.
And do you remember at the end of World War II when there was a document presented by Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt where they said they would never allow Germany to arm itself again? Well, why would they do that? Well, because of the history of Germany's warfare. Something we need to think about. And they also clearly planned, and you'll see that from the material we'll send you, that they, right at the end of World War II, they knew they were going to lose the war, and so they began to prepare an underground, and these major corporations like Messerschmitt, Volkswagen Works were committed to hiring some of those top Nazi officials so that they could continue that in this underground to plan for World War III. Now that's all documented in the 90s. That was declassified. They kept it classified for 50 years to our shame.
I played that for you the other day. But here, I mean, it's right there in classified documents from the World War II era. Yeah, they knew they were going to lose, so they went underground. We had an article at the Trumpet 3 years ago about the rise of the German industrialists. I'll quote from that here in just a second if I have time. The plotting, the scheming, the secret deals, they're happening. And you can be sure they're all intended to weaken America. The Financial Times, after the verbal assault on Zelenskyy by Donald Trump and his vice president. So you see where they stand. Trump and Vance verbally assaulted Zelenskyy. Ukraine was facing catastrophe. The obvious risk was that Trump would work with Vladimir Putin to force an isolated Ukraine to accept a de facto Russian victory. Well, there's others, that George Friedman being among them, who believe that Russia wants a way out. You know, there's all the talk, if he takes Ukraine, he's on his way to Warsaw, then Paris. And as the American Spectator put it, he hasn't even been able to get to Kiev, or Kyiv, however you pronounce it. Of course, he wants to come away victorious, but, you know, Putin's got some issues to deal with at home as well. And they've lost nearly a million Russians. And Friedman's certainly right about how that weakens Russia's army. He's the Prince of Rosh. Yes, he's a madman. He's a dictator. But it is possible. He's looking at the bottom line thinking, oh, okay, if I get a chunk of Eastern Ukraine, I'll take it. I don't know. Who knows? But the world is rearming. We're living in an era of rearmament. It says some in highly adept diplomacy, or some highly adept diplomacy by Britain's Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. He's carried out some highly adept diplomacy, working closely with France's Emmanuel Macron. They've staved off the worst for now. They've come in and they've bought some time for Zelenskyy, for Ukraine. They've saved the day. At a meeting in London, Zelenskyy was warmly embraced by European political leaders and later met King Charles, who seemed unconcerned that the Ukrainian leader was not wearing a suit. You see how cruel Donald Trump is? The message was clear. Zelenskyy and Ukraine are not alone. Who put Zelenskyy up to this? There's the $64,000 question. Who put him up to the showdown in the Oval Office? It was supposed to be ceremonial. J.D. Vance explained that last night. Everything was agreed to. He was just to come in and sign, have lunch, do a dual press conference, and move on. Starmer and Macron may have temporarily wrested the diplomatic initiative from Trump and Putin. Wow. By announcing that European nations will work with Ukraine on a peace proposal. European nations will work with Ukraine on a peace proposal? Isn't that what started the fight? You can't make peace with Putin. That was the lecture Zelenskyy gave to J.D. Vance. You can't carry out diplomacy with Putin. And now all of a sudden Europe shows up and, well, they're leading peace talks. This is astounding. It says here, rather than simply bleating that Europe and Ukraine must be at the table, Starmer and Macron have taken important steps to make sure that happens. The French are also pushing for a temporary ceasefire. A ceasefire? Have we heard about a ceasefire before? Yes, that would be Orange Hitler. He's brought it up multiple times. They're calling or pushing for a ceasefire, which underlines that they are working for peace. So now the Financial Times said, Macron, Starmer, France, all European elites, they just want peace. Excuse me, but the bad orange man has been calling for peace thousands of times, possibly. I want peace. I want the killing to stop. I want the shooting to stop. We've lost too many Russians. We've lost too many Ukrainians. And here come the Europeans, and suddenly they're the peacemakers because they're calling for a ceasefire, don't you know? Just stay with me. It gets better. It says any excitement about these developments needs to be heavily qualified. It's still likely that the peace initiatives will founder. There's no real sign that Russia is prepared to stop fighting. In fact, Putin's incentives to cut a deal are diminishing. It also seems very unlikely that the U.S. will agree to provide a military backstop to an Anglo-French reassurance force in Ukraine. And listen to this. Trump's obsessive fear of a third world war, it's an obsessive fear. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Trump was going to start World War III with North Korea or somebody because of a tweet. Now he's saying, I want to stop World War III. And here's the Financial Times. Nose in the air. Oh, he's got this obsessive fear of World War III. He's not going to provide a military backstop or any kind of guarantee of security. No reassurance. He's become a vulnerability, Donald Trump, because he wants to prevent World War III, and he wants the fighting in Ukraine to stop. How times have changed. Now we're in an era of rearmament. You see, Europe has to rearm because of Donald Trump and his obsessive fear of a world war. Excuse me, is there something wrong with fearing World War III? Seems like there should be a healthy fear of that worldwide. No, it's an era of rearmament. And the Europeans cheer. Yeah, that's what we need. We've got to align in opposition to Trump. This is where we are. Listen to J.D. Vance from his interview last night, clip 15. If you want to actually ensure that Vladimir Putin does not invade Ukraine again, the very best security guarantee is to give Americans economic upside in the future of Ukraine. That is a way better security guarantee than 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. The security guarantee and also the economic guarantee for Ukraine is to rebuild the country and ensure that America has a long-term interest. You're not going to do that if you come to the Oval Office, insult the president, and refuse to follow his plan for peace. He's exactly right. If you want peace, if you want security, you invite America, the world's lone superpower, you invite them in for long-term investment and rebuilding, as America has been known to do. We rebuilt Germany following World War II. So here comes America, all the contractors, you invite them in, and Putin's going to think twice about firing into Ukraine. But no, that arrangement blew up in 10 minutes on Friday afternoon. How do you explain this? Unless you know there's some back channel agreements in place and that prophecy is accelerating. The fulfillment of it's happening according to the plan, God's plan. God told us. He's removing all of the remaining obstacles to this lightning speed formation of the Holy Roman Empire. Herbert Armstrong used to talk about how suddenly it would happen. It would happen with suddenness. And it would be brought on by a number of factors. He pointed to, the world economy. And Germany's had its struggles. But like I said earlier, nothing revs up the economy like a war machine. The industrial war complex, there's one in the United States as well. And they love when there are wars and when there is plenty of ammunition being made at U.S. companies. Well, it's going to be a boom for German industrialists as well. Jeroboam, remember, you consider this seeming dichotomy between Donald Trump's strong domestic success and then all of these significant miscalculations abroad. As I say, he's a catalyst for the formation of the Holy Roman Empire. And of course, it's history. If you look, like I said yesterday, you look at the decades-long policy of appeasing Putin on the march during Obama and Biden years, primarily. And then Trump's left with the mess. And as J.D. Vance explained last night, Americans can be satisfied in getting some of their tax dollars back with the mineral rights deal. And then Ukraine can have its nation rebuilt. Like I say, you listen to J.D. Vance, and it just strikes you as being reasonable. Now, the peacemaking of men is not going to work. It's Isaiah 59, verse 8. It's a real thing. But who is sounding reasonable and who sounds duplicitous and nefarious? It may, on the surface, we're living in an era of rearmament, says the woman in Europe. She's over the European Commission or something. She's wearing a nice business suit, and she's talking about a world rearming. So where does that lead us? In a world filled with nuclear weapons already. The Guardian. Well, first, let me just read to you what Donald Trump said on Truth Social. Europe has spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they have spent on defending Ukraine by far. That, my friends, is a truth bomb. And von der Leyen and all the rest, they don't like hearing that. They don't like their hypocrisy being exposed. They spend more money on Russian gas than they do to help the modern day Churchill, to help save democracy, because, you know, Europeans love democracy. This is from The Guardian last week. EU member states bought 21.9 billion euros worth of Russian oil and gas in the third year of the war. I mean, that's just last year. Almost 22 billion euro they've shipped to Putin. I mean, they're keeping Russia afloat. They're keeping Russia's economy afloat. Remember when Donald Trump, this was in 2018, he called out the Germans to their faces on this deal, this secret deal they had going with Nord Stream 2. All of this Russian energy just pouring into Germany. Listen to this from 7 years ago.
Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers. It has been the formal policy of our country since President Monroe that we reject the interference of foreign nations in this hemisphere and in our own affairs.
Yeah, you saw the German elites there from 2018. They were just laughing at the bad orange man, saying, look, you can't be dependent on Russian energy. And here, look at the narrative. Rachel Maddow, she's trumpeting it last night. It's Trump, Putin, Trump, Putin. Okay, you got the Trump-Russia collusion hoax all over again for the, what, third, fourth, fifth time? This was one who stood up to Putin. And he says, you're reliant on Russian energy to the tune of 22 billion euro just last year. Nothing changed. Donald Trump called them out in 2018. He called them out today. You're spending more on Russian energy than you are on defending Ukraine. What does that tell you? The numbers don't lie. Look at the headlines that are being ignored or missed. This was last week at The Guardian. You would think they would be fuming at MSNBC. How is this possible? How are all of our friends in Europe spending all this money to help Vladimir Putin? Trump! That's all they got in their mind. Trump! Trump is on the brain 24/7. But as I say, the numbers don't lie, and we're hearing a lot about the numbers of late. 800 billion euro to build up a European army, Europe's military, a united military. It's pretty incredible. It says here the amount is 1/6 greater than the 18.7 billion the EU allocated to Ukraine in financial aid in 2024. So they're nowhere near providing Ukraine the kind of financial support that the U.S. is. And then they're spending more in Russia than they are Ukraine. So there you go. Hypocrites. And Donald Trump calls them out for their hypocrisy. They're helping Putin. And so what does MSNBC have to say? Trump's helping Putin. This is from The Guardian 2 years ago. Arms sent to Ukraine will end up in criminal hands, says the Interpol chief. What? You mean they're not going to use all of their arms to fight Putin? Even the Ukrainian? The Ukrainian oligarchs? Oh, yes. Tucker Carlson has been on this, speculating that there may be weapons pouring through the southern border that have come from Ukraine, that have come from America. You see how it works? The black market. I mean, as soon as Tucker says it, all the fact checkers show up and say, no, every penny of that money that goes to Ukraine, all of the military equipment, it is used to fight Putin. You just know this. We're fighting for democracy. And we're also buying Russian energy to the tune of $22 billion. But just let that headline pass away. Look at what's being exposed. This is from Germany's secret war against America. It's at the Trumpet. Again, this takes you back 7 years. And as I read this, ask yourself, who else talks about any of this except for God's work? It says, when NATO was started in 1949, its basic purpose was to protect disarmed Germany and other European countries from the Russian-led Soviet Union. To accomplish this, the treaty established collective defense for member nations. If an aggressor attacked one of them, it would have war with all of them. Okay, so there's some context. That's how the alliance started. That's what it was intended to do from the beginning. It was Hastings Ismay, the first Secretary General of NATO, that said that this alliance is meant to keep the Russians out, keep the Americans in, and keep the Germans down. Keep the Germans down. That was the whole purpose of NATO. My father writes, Nord Stream 2 binds Russia and Germany together in a way that undermines NATO. Well, how about that? Why would you understand why Putin would want to undermine NATO? Why would Germany undermine NATO? Well, that's a good question. Inquiring minds want to know. It says, in fact, though Russia and Germany will not say so, this pipeline project is clearly intended to wreck NATO. You heard it here first. Trump called them out in 2018. The German elites laughed in his face. But who was right? Who was right? It says, why would these nations want to do that? Well, it's easy to see why Russia would. Russian President Putin views NATO as a force that restricts Russia's rise and slows down his quest to rebuild the Soviet empire. Okay, that's easy to understand. But why would Germany undermine NATO? He says, America spent billions of dollars raising Germany from the rubble of World War II, and billions more keeping the peace in Europe. Germany would not be where it is today without the vast amount of help America supplied. It just wouldn't be there. Ukraine wouldn't be where it is today were it not for the vast amount of help that America has provided. I mentioned that Thomas Sowell quote yesterday. I paraphrased, I went and found it. He said, when people get used to preferential treatment, equal treatment seems like discrimination. Well, 25% tariff on Canada. Canada says 25% on America. The numbers don't lie. That's equal. It's just that Trump has more leverage because America has a bigger economy. But you listen to Vance, you listen to Trump, and you listen to them talk about deals, equal treatment, fairness, America not getting ripped off anymore. What's to criticize there? Well, if you've been getting the preferential treatment for decades, if America's been funding the security umbrella for decades to the tune of billions and billions and billions of dollars, and then suddenly, it seems anyway, it's equal treatment, well, it seems like you're being discriminated against. So you've got to act. We're living in an era of rearmament. That's the way European leaders interpret all of this. That's the way the radical left interprets it as well. Rachel Maddow on her show last night said that the only friend America has now is Russia. It's just crazy. It's so easy, isn't it? Blame Trump. When all else fails, just blame Trump. Zelenskyy can do no wrong. Von der Leyen, hey, you talk about building a European military, all that you want. It's totally necessary. Look, we've got to align against Donald Trump. The world is doing that. He's now the vulnerability. My father says we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France. This is from 2018. We're protecting all of these countries, and then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia? Can this really be happening? This was happening in 2018. Trump called them out on it in front of the whole UN, the whole world, in fact. And there were the Germans just laughing. What's he talking about? Come on. Trump was right. The Trumpet covers over the years on the German industrialists, the secret alliance between Germany and Russia. I mean, those need to be spotlighted all the more right now, don't they? We're living in an era of fulfilled prophecy. That's right. Many elite Germans feel their nation has now gotten all it can from the U.S., and they're ready to move on. You heard it at the Trumpet first. You see the spirit of that everywhere. As I said, Zelenskyy typifies it. Now there's other things happening behind closed doors. There's back channel agreements and so on. And I mean, for him to just walk out of the Oval Office, I guess he was actually kicked out, but leave that aside, to throw a tantrum like a child when you've been given $200 billion and all of this military hardware, you've probably got some other arrangement in the works. And well, you have the headlines coming out of Europe. They had a productive weekend. Now it's Europe leading the way for the ceasefire. Things have really, they've changed dramatically, and it's happened overnight. It says some powerful Germans today are thinking more and more about the Holy Roman Empire, and they want modern Germany to assume more power of its own in the spirit of that empire. They want to establish Europe as a mighty German-led superpower. They want to establish Europe as a mighty German-led superpower. That was the Trumpet in 2018. I mean, I could take you back to Herbert Armstrong in the 1950s. The message has been consistent. And now you've got the European Commission president standing up before the world saying that we're living in an era of rearmament, and nobody bats an eye. She announces that there's 600 billion euro going toward a united European military, and nobody bats an eye. Play that one again. I think this is clip 1.
We're living in the most momentous and dangerous of times. In the various meetings in the last few weeks, most recently 2 days ago in London, the answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament. And Europe is ready to massively boost its defense spending, both to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
Their own security, their own defense. We had a Trumpet headline, this was on the cover, from 2022, the rise of German industry. That's right. March 2022, this was in that issue. Rising from the German underground. I don't have time to go through some of these quotes, but these are the headlines. Germany is transforming before your eyes. That's from 2022 as well. The German transformation. It's now out in the open. Everyone's calling for it. Everyone's applauding it. No one is sounding the alarm except for God's church. That's all we have time for on today's show, the fastest moving hour in broadcasting, especially today. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us for today's program. and we'll see you again tomorrow.